Alrighty, so last time we basically were looking at our project and setting up some things, and as you can definitely see, I have added some stuff, so I'll briefly go over it. Again, this isn't a songwriting tutorial. I'm definitely not a songwriter, so this is just how I have things kind of done, and I'm doing things, of course, in a more explanatory manner than when I actually make a song. So I'm not using my presets, so I'll be adding in all of the VSTs that you're going to be seeing me use as we go along. So basically what I did was I added some basic guitars, nothing fancy, they're pretty sloppy, just as a temporary sort of measure. And I'll show you guys a good bit of the song. I want to try to avoid using too many of the effects I have going on, just because it might clip. But essentially what I wanted to do is communicate the idea in my head, the thing that I wanted to hum and hear at the very end of the product. And I wanted to just get the ideas out. So I started with an intro here, have some clean guitars. I call them pad guitar 1, 2, 3 because they're sounding like synth pads. And what else I did was afterwards I came up with like 1 or 2 riffs. Again, I can't really give you a songwriting tutorial, but usually think about the key that you're in and think about the notes that fall into the scale and think about the ones that don't necessarily come to mind. For you music theorists, think about the 6 and like the 7 sometimes. Just like expand your ideas. Don't shove yourself in one box, but also try to stay what sounds musically correct, or at least what sounds what doesn't sound dissonant. So anyway, I come up with a riff here, and then we enter where these red tracks are with the guitar riff I came up with, the more metal one, and we go through that riff a couple times. We play the main verse of the song, the do-da-da, do-da-da, and then we've got a couple sections afterwards where I'm playing around, and then I interluded to another Zelda song, Ballad of the Goddesses from Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, just because the progressions are similar enough to where I could make small changes and it didn't feel unnatural. Then I've got a guitar solo, and during that guitar solo, which I have not recorded for our purposes, I wrote a different sort of chord progression in the back. Then we return and we crash and go back to more echoes. It's a little straightforward, a little different, something that I want, because there's so many Song of Storms covers, and I wanted it to be mine. Again, why listen to mine when you can listen to someone else's? The answer, I hope, is that mine has these catchy riffs and sections, and it feels different. I'm going to play through the first bit just to show you. Now that we have like a good understanding, or you guys do, of what I'm working with here, basically what I want to do now is begin the drum writing sort of process. Now I already have a drum tutorial, and while it's not the best, I think it covers most of your bases here. So I am not going to go over that as far as like how to click and write, but I wanna talk about like how to accompany your song, as far as like what I do to write these drums. So I wanted to bring the drums in only when we start getting the distorted guitar rhythm. So I decided to start a couple lines just so I can talk about them, and I'll write the rest of the drums myself, but I'll stop by for some of the cool accents and different points. So we're gonna start with the riff and just listening without it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So sorry. So I want something like I want some sort of like segue. So I used a kind of a snary sort of, I don't want to say Pink Floyd, but it's kind of like an influence for that. So I wrote in here 1, 2, 3. I've got click, click, dink, tom tom. So 1. It's kind of hard to vocalize what I'm doing. So something that you guys might really want to take note of is how I'm writing these drums, not just where I'm clicking, but kind of like the detail I'm putting into the velocities. So I'm hitting the snare lightly here because we just started and we're trying to build up. And then this third hit here is much higher. It is at, what number are we at? We're at like around 117. So we have this build up here. We also have a couple snare ruffles, which is going to get more of the actual physical snare instrument sound in it. So we add these really lightly around like 30 velocity. It's pretty tough, but the idea here is that we're just having a lot more believable and intricate a drum part rather than it sounding like a robot. So and that synthesizer part's getting really annoying, so I'm actually going to scroll down from velocity to volume, which is another kind of MIDI measurement we can have, and I'm just gonna take it down a notch. So now I don't recommend mixing while working on other stuff, but sometimes you really will have to, or else you can't hear it. So what I'm doing here for this main pattern is, let's look at it closely. Basically at the beginning, we have a 3/4 or even a 6/8 sort of pattern going on here. So what we're trying to do is basically count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we want the snare to be on the 4. So if you count out with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, the first beat is going to have the snare here. And the reason why we do this, which isn't something that a lot of people think about, but is very important to understand, when you're writing music, especially modern music, we have it laid back, and the snares and the accents are on the 2. So it's, but in classical music, a lot of the time you have the power note or like the accents hitting on the first, the front. But if you start playing on the in the reverse, then you'll have like a snare kick, snare kick, and it does not match the rhythm and groove that I want to say like 95% of the time you're trying to do. So definitely think about how other musicians of the same styles, specifically professional musicians and bands you're listening to, do it, and take a cue from them. There's a reason like why they're doing it. So let's just see. So we got a kick, snare kick, kick. I'm trying my hardest. I'm so sorry. kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick. That might have sounded like the most stupid thing ever, but and we're also playing with the hi-hats here. Now notice that I vary them in which kind of accent, and some of them are closed. If you visualize your drummer, you will have a good pattern here. So all I'm really trying to do is match points in our riff, which is over here, that work. Now you can, for a lot of tight metal parts, you might want to just have the kick hit every time there's a major like guitar downstroke or whatever you want to call it. And I like the word accent, just a spike in the noise. But I want this one to be sluggish and move slow. So I'm going to match the bass guitar to our drums later when I record bass. So I start with a crash, of course, to enter into kind of the riff here. And then I just, have a basic hi-hat beat. And at the end, I add an extra snare, just kind of like to throw us back. So... And one thing I'm also doing is I'm holding the right mouse button down, selecting all of these things, and I'm manually clicking left mouse now, holding it down, kind of like dancing it around, just so that I can make sure I have absolute like humanization. If you understand what I mean there. The same goes for snares, and we can even add a couple like ghost note snares, but that's all right for now. The hi-hat actually has some very low hits here. So if you if we want, we can copy and paste, which I have. And usually when I copy and paste these patterns, I'll just take away the last part and add a fill. So I just played with the toms a little. We're playing a slow song. We don't need anything crazy. See, even that was a little like too fast for me. But let's copy and paste some more. And, you know, we'll add some subtle details. Maybe like a ruffle. And, you know, we'll finish off here because we just have a 1, 2, 3, do. And then we repeat again. It's a very different sort of count. So we're just going to write this one from scratch, and then I'm going to write a lot of the rest of the video, and we'll come back. And I'm also adding the snare edge so that we can have some sort of like doubling in power and volume. And we'll add like some light snares here. And maybe I'll change that to I like to have one on each side so that we're not playing favorites with the stereo. And I always match crash to a kick usually, just to add a little more power. And of course, I'm not going to let you guys watch like a video of me thinking, so I just want you to know the process, honestly. And as you're working on your own covers, especially if you guys are working for the challenge here, just think about these ideas. Match your accents. Try to leave some air also. You know, you don't have to fill every single gap here. That's why I'm cutting off things right around here before we go back to the song. So stick with that, and we're going to come back when I have all the drums, and we're going to look at what else we can do as far as tracking more stuff. Alrighty, so I know I'm fast forwarding a lot, and I know I can't hit absolutely everything I do in these tutorials. The main thing I'm doing is going through what people are specifically asking me how I do. So of course, basically, now that we're back from recording, I created all the drums, which you can see up here. I glued them together, and if you don't know how to do that, just for example, you hold Control and click the two parts that you want. You can right click and let's see, go to glue items or Control Shift G. Learn some hotkeys, save you some time. So once we have it glued together, the main thing I like to do, we don't have to do right now, but I would forget otherwise, is I like to right click and drag. So hold down your right mouse button and drag it over. Select all this good stuff here. I like to click the kick and the snare. And even though I hand wrote almost all of these, I like to go into Humanize. And I like to add a little bit of velocity. This is the percentage by which things will be forced to change. Timing is how much of the timing is going to be off. And we'll change it a little, but I want it to be pretty tight. And then timing bias is whether we're going to shift it all back more likely, which is useful for strings, or anything that you want to be laid back, or forward, which will be more like up in your face. So we'll change the kick and snare a little, but they hold our song together. I like to make the cymbals a lot more loose. So we'll add the timing on those a little more, and then we'll humanize that. It's the little stuff, honestly. Now that we have the drums randomized, it might sound pretty good. And what I did also was I re-recorded my guitars properly. So I have one guitar on the left and one guitar on the right, which is our standard metal form of recording rhythm guitar. Some people like to have 4 guitars going at once. Some people like to change the tones. I think that I get the most consistent sound of just having 2. So usually I will keep just 2 rhythm guitars. We also have bass guitar now, and I'll just let you listen to what I did here. I used finger. And if you look at the bottom here, I've got effects green, which means that there's a VST or like a mixing effect that's thrown in everything. So basically, what we've got going on is a, I'll show you for the bass. I have a VST loaded for Guitar Rig 5, which is the program of my choice for guitar amplifying simulator. I do not like Pod Farm because it sounds a little too digital for me, and Amplitude was a little confusing. But you can make the best out of anything that you have. Guitar Rig's a little more on the expensive side, so I don't expect everyone to have it. And honestly, it's just the best that I've found besides hardware so far. And I wouldn't dismiss any program. I have some great tones for Pod Farm, and if you guys would like a guitar tone tutorial, I have it covered. And I'll post a link in the description to maybe the first tutorial video of this series, and maybe this video too. Just so that you guys don't bug me too many questions about that or while I'm trying to cover other stuff. But just a rundown, I have a noise gate, a compressor, and then a bass amplifier, and then a cabinet, and then an additional compressor on top that's a little lighter, and then a limiter. It's a very straightforward direct bass tone. But I recorded the exact same thing at the same time as well, using a distorted bass tone. Now this one has a sledgehammer, a distortion, or kind of like a drive, overdrive sort of pedal running through it, and it gives it a very smacky sort of tone. I personally think that when my song is going to have more distorted guitars in it, and like more of a metal approach, it's very important that we kind of blend together the low end so that things sound pretty it can still sound very heavy and attacky, but things hold together. If I just had a plain bass, you may not have the full saturation effect. So that's an example of what we have put together. I don't want to mislead anybody. Things are going to have to sound outstanding in mixing before we can get to putting a seal on this in our mastering phase. But right now, I kind of want to just go over basically what you're going to have. If you're ever disappointed, things sound kind of suckish, it's most likely something that you could change by either playing the part better, which is usually the biggest cure, I honestly think, or just kind of re-looking at your mix. So right now we have, drums. I added some guitars, and I want to show you guys basically what I'm doing here, and give away like what makes mine, so that you can kind of figure out, hey, I don't like what Ro's doing here. Let me try it differently. Or like, wow, I like that part that Ro did there. Maybe I should try it this way. So I have 2 lead guitars. And as you can see, I kind of pan them out here. I'm trying so hard not to mix while recording because I want to try to cover that in its own separate video. But what can't be helped can't be helped. So some stuff is panned here, and if you're following my song exactly as is, which I do not mind, feel free to like just copy down what I have here and then go from there. The most education or learning experience you could probably get though is by picking your favorite song, making your favorite arrangement, and just making the best darn cover that you can, and using this just as guidelines. Again, I've played with some of the drums here, so sorry, I was going to talk about the leads. So what I have here is 2 leads, and then I have these 2 backgrounds, and I'll show you what kind of a tone I created here. So for example, if we just want to listen to this background lead, as I call it, it has a compressor at the beginning, which keeps the volume consistent. And then I'm using an amp that's modeled after like one of the more older Marshalls. And basically what it's doing here is getting a lot more delay. So I've got a delay, Then I've got a vintage reverb just for the slapback, and then I've got this very large reverb, little reflector in Guitar Rig, but any reverb you want to add in the actual Reaper or whatever you're using is fine. I just have 100% wet and 50% dry, anything where you can get the balance. And we have light stuff like this. And then so basically what I'm doing here is creating kind of like a frequential layer of sound. And it's basically just, I'm trying to thicken up the layers and add this beautiful atmosphere. Bands like Tesseract and Animals as Leaders, and even some of the post-rock that I've been shown recently, it just has like a lot of those flavors. So I really want to like match that. And again, the part of making music is taking your favorite music and picking what you like and even what you don't like until eventually you start speaking your own style. So just for example, okay, and before we give away the guitar solo, so basically that's what's going on with leads. Rhythm I've kind of explained, we just have 2 guitars right now, and we have a lot of stuff going on in the synth here, so I do want to talk about it so you guys have the absolute, this is exactly what he's doing. So we won't get why his mine doesn't sound like his, whatever. So I have the synthesizer going here. This synthesizer here in our track Noise is from Kontakt. Specifically, it is a Spitfire Albion synthesizer, and I'm using small 8-dio strings. I highly recommend, if you are on a budget, I highly recommend Philharmonic strings, just for having. They were not more than $60 US if you guys are interested in that sound. However, it's always best to have a live soloist, so definitely ask around if you want to get the perfect string sound, and if not, play around. You don't need to have the best quality software to make really beautiful music, and this isn't it. The bell, which you'll hear over here, comes from Native Instruments Reactor 5. This is completely free software and one of my absolute favorite pickups. I'm using the Requiem Bells preset here, and I've used this a lot in the album I made, PK Rockin', for a lot of the synths and creepy sounds. Let's see. And the strings here, of course, is just being fed by MIDI. And if you guys are curious how that works, basically I click Input Output, I make a new track, and all I do is go to the MIDI, send to track Noise. Now Noise is the track that has the Kontakt VST in it, the actual effect. So I send MIDI to channel 2 to the channel 2 of what I'm sending it to. That's all this means. It's not crazy. And then when I write the strings, I just scroll down to channel 2 when I want to write it. Actually, it doesn't even matter. I just draw it out and it'll only send 2. And then in Noise, we go into Kontakt, and then we have MIDI channel 2. So now it's going to receive it, and I can do that, I don't know how many times, maybe 16, 32, it just depends on how many outputs you selected for your Kontakt. For those of you who do not know what Kontakt is a software that basically functions like a hub, or like a big, kind of like a split board. And basically, whenever you give it MIDI information, wherever it is, it can be on the track that you made, it can be our string track, wherever, it'll feed it in, and then depending on what instruments that your Kontakt has, loaded up and what MIDI channel they're assigned to, you'll be able to use those. So if I made all of these MIDI 1, and then I just wrote a bunch of things, it would just start playing everything at the same time. It would be terrible. So obviously we didn't do that. And then we have little bits like this. And I know I'm going over so much so fast, so please pause, please ask questions. These are my strings here, and if you remember, I want to humanize all of my instruments, so I'm going to increase the timing, and then I'm going to push them back a little. So now everything's going to start sooner, and it'll sound a little nicer blended. And if I deselect the very first ones and stretch everyone a little forward, they'll overlap nicer. Isn't that pretty? Yeah, and I actually have my clean guitars, the echoey ones at the beginning, all in the same synth bus, which I didn't have to do, but I wanted to try to treat them all the same, kind of compress them. And there's actually a humongous problem here. They aren't the same colors. I am terribly sorry. That was a foolish mistake of mine. So now they are all cyan. And basically, I wanna kind of put a closer to this as I'm dividing. Basically, we've covered, why do a cover. We sang about, how to do it, what we need physically, and we came up with an idea for a song. We decided what makes it unique. We just sat there and came up with some riffs, listened to the song. We put it together roughly, added some drums and markers so that we know where everything is. Then once we liked what we had, we re-record the guitars with the drum track in the background, which is very important because you get a feel for playing it as if you were live, and that gives a lot more life to it than just chopping up a million times. And I know this is cut up pretty well too, but when we do like a video for it, then we'll just take one of the tracks that didn't sound as good as the other one, and then we'll just record it straight and maybe tune up a bit. We added bass guitar, we added lead guitars, which I still think are a little temporary. And basically now, I think the next step is to individually look at each one of these instruments and begin to actually mix it down together. So hopefully you guys can work on that. I would like to release one of these every week, so hopefully next week you guys will be up for mixing